After the Montero pick, Mike Minor, Lorenzo Cain, Neil Walker, Angel Pagan, Lance Lynn, Homer Bailey, Pedro Alvarez, J.J. Hardy, Carl Crawford, and Everett Cabrera were selected. And to start out, round 15, Chris Perez, Dan Uggla, and Addison Reed were taken. We've got the same number of auto drafters still in the same position, so at least the people who showed up have stuck with the draft. That's nice. Coming up, we still need a utility and another relief pitcher, and then just kind of generic pitching spots we need to fill. Rafael Betancourt was just selected, so it looks like the run on closers has begun. This is about the time when it happens, between the 12th and 17th round. Most people tend to wait on saves. It is a pretty good strategy and a pretty viable, method of drafting a team, because closers tend to be a dime a dozen. But what that means is that when you get to these rounds, they start to fly off the board. And with that in mind, you really have to either kind of jump on the train, take some closers, or you have to wait and be okay taking the quote-unquote the bad ones, the Bobby Parnells, the Jose Veras's. Or you can speculate on guys who may not have the job now, but will get it later. Your Kenley Jansen's, your Ryan Madson's, and maybe even your Al Albuquerque's in the case of the Tigers. So those types of players are other guys you can target if you've waited on saves. I would like to get some more starters on my roster as well as relievers, and I want to fill this utility spot. I do not think I want to wait too much longer on the utility spot because the guys I like are starting to thin out. Like I said, Todd Frazier's the guy I'd really like to get there, and he's fourth as far as the Yahoo ranked batters available. There was a feature on Yahoo earlier this week, or maybe last week, where they did basically a profile of Frazier and said, oh, he's got all these different position eligibilities and he plays in a good hitter's park. So I'm sure I'm not the only one considering him around this time. I would not be surprised if he got taken before I picked here. With that said, I wouldn't mind getting Michael Morris, Michael Kadire, or even Brandon Belt here in this spot if I miss out on Frazier. Although if I miss out on Frazier, I'm less likely to care about filling this utility position here, because while he's the guy I want, the other guys are kind of interchangeable to me. Let's see, who else has been selected here? Chris Perez, Dan Uggla, Addison Reed, Rafael Betancourt, I said all those. Eric Ibar, Josh Beckett, Josh Reddick, Jonathan Neese, and Grant Balfour were all selected. And there goes Jared Parker. So we're looking at pitching, and we're looking at Todd Frazier. Checking out the pitchers here, the guys I like towards the top of these rankings are Marco Estrada, Brandon McCarthy, and that's about it. Further down, there are other guys I like, and there's some relief pitchers I like. Plenty of the closers that are still here. With that said, I'm going to take, the guy at the end here doesn't need any more hitters. He needs pitchers as well. I'm going to sleep on Frazier for a pick here and make sure I get a pitcher that I want. As far as the relievers go, Bobby Parnell is the highest ranked closer. That's kind of terrifying. Brandon League is also here, as is Steve Chiswick. Alexi Ogando is a guy who has relief pitcher eligibility, but who's going to start this year for the Rangers, and he's a guy I like a lot. He's a guy I will be targeting with one of my next picks. McCarthy is a guy I tend to be targeting. I'm going to go for him here. Actually, no, I'm going to take Estrada. He's higher up on our staff rankings. I said I was going to follow those, and I don't own him yet in any league. So let's grab him and target Frazier here with my next pick. I do need to consider more closers. I guess I could take a reliever here instead of Frazier. I own Frazier pretty much everywhere I've drafted. With that said, yeah, the closer ranks are definitely thinning out here. The person at the wheel used one of his picks on Kyle Loesch, who apparently is signed with Milwaukee. Interesting, I did not know that. Yeah, so the question here is, do I go closer or do I take a bat? Now, because I kind of prioritized offense in the beginning of the draft, I have a feeling like I want to think that my offense is good, compared to some of the other ones in the league. Considering like the variance of fantasy sports and the fact that I picked towards the end of the first round which means that like I got a bad first rounder, good second rounder, bad third rounder, good fourth rounder. I think it's a bit of a disadvantage. Garrett Jones was just selected. I'm in a position now where I think it would probably be wiser to take a closer and bolster that part of my team than take another bat, because there are plenty of batters left who I think have value. Even guys like Kendrys Morales buried a little further down here. Like I like Frazier a lot. I just don't know if I can afford to spend the pick on him right now when I only have one closer on my team. So I think I'm going to take Brandon League here. Let's check our relief pitcher rankings and see who we have ranked higher. Chris Perez, is he still available? Does not appear so. Grant Balfour is gone. Marco Estrada. Glenn Perkins. We have Perkins rated higher than League, and he's higher in the Yahoo ranks, so we'll take him. Closers are closers. He had some pretty good numbers last year, actually. So we'll roll with Perk. And next round, we will think about another bat for that utility spot and some other pitching options. We'll catch you in just a minute. After the Perkins pick, AJ Burnett, David Ortiz, Derek Holland, Marco Scutero, Alexi Ogando, Jeremy Hellickson, Justin Morneau, Matt Garza, Alex Rodriguez, and Tim Hudson were selected to round out round 17, to round out round 16, excuse me. Round 17 started with Kyle Seager and followed with Ichiro Suzuki, Casey Jansen, Alex Cobb, Bobby Parnell, Todd Frazier, Kenley Jansen. So I did wait a little bit too long on Frazier, but like I said, I think I needed another closer a little bit more. Brandon League was just selected right after Kenley Jansen, nonetheless, which is kind of interesting because League is going to start the year as the closer there, but Jansen definitely has a better pedigree and more strikeout potential. It's interesting how Major League Baseball teams tend to want to keep those high strikeout, like quote unquote, their better relievers available for the 7th and 8th innings now. And I think it's smart. I mean, Bruce Bochy wrote it to the World Series last year, essentially, by using his relievers in non-traditional ways. Anyway, that doesn't have a whole lot of bearing on fantasy, but it could in this case, where League is the inferior pitcher, but the guy who gets the saves. And that could be frustrating for some fantasy owners, but it's part of the game now. We just have to deal with it. Picks I'm looking at here. Now that Frazier is gone, Michael Morse, Brandon Belt are the guys I'm most interested in. I was talking about Adam Eaton earlier, and I just recently read a little story about him saying that he's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks because he messed up his shoulder or something like that. So he is kind of off my radar now. I wouldn't mind stashing him in a DL spot, which you do get one of, I think, in these Yahoo's standard leagues. Dexter Fowler, Brandon McCarthy were just selected. It's too bad about McCarthy. He was one of the guys I kind of wanted here. So the guy at the wheel still needs pitchers more than hitters. With that said, last time he took another hitter in Garrett Jones. I still need to fill my utility spot and some pitching spots. I do need more closers here. I think I'm going to take Ernesto Freri here. And that'll probably do it for me on closers. I might speculate on a guy like Al Albuquerque later, or Sergio Santos if he's still available. But I think my plan with these two picks is to go Freri and Belt. If Belt gets taken by this guy at the wheel, then I might take another closer. I might take a starter. But we'll see what happens after I take Freri. Freri's another guy I like, and if only because his peripheral stats are very good. He strikes out a lot of guys for a reliever. ERA and WHIP aren't great, per se, and it's possible he's going to lose his job to Ryan Madsen when Ryan Madsen gets healthy. But, I don't know, guys who tend to start with the closer's job, that's fine with me. If he ends up losing the job, I can either keep him on for his good peripherals, or I can just boot him and start streaming with that spot in my lineup, or pick up, hopefully, some other reliever who's getting saves, because they tend to turn over pretty often in baseball. So yeah, Belt is at the top of my wish list here. We'll see if he makes it to me. If he doesn't, we're looking at I might take just another closer. I might take Ryan Madsen and just lock up that Angels save category, or I could take another player. I could take like Steve Chiswick or Jose Veras. Although I think I'd probably rather just take Madsen and cement myself as the guy who owns the Angels closer. And then when Madsen goes on the DL to start the year, I can just pick somebody else up. There have been some other players who were around because they were injured, guys like Alex Rodriguez, David Ortiz, guys who we know are going to start the year on the DL. I tend to avoid those guys in the early rounds, if only because you get sure stats otherwise. I'm going to take Belt here. But yeah, like at this point in the draft, I'm much more likely to take a DL stash candidate, whether it be a guy like Madsen or I haven't seen how far down he is in the rankings, but Corey Hart is the guy I will be targeting with these last 5 bench spots, because he's a guy that as soon as the season starts, you can throw him on the DL, pick up somebody else who's useful at the beginning of the year, and kind of roll with it that way. So we're going to go find Corey Hart, add him to the queue. I'm also going to look for, what's his name? Emilio Bonifacio. Because it sounds like he might be getting more playing time than originally forecasted. Anyway, I will find these guys, add them to the queue, and I'll be back for round 19 in just a moment. Okay, after the belt picks, Steve Chiswick, Kevin Youkilis, Carlos Marmol, Ryan Dempster, Josh Rutledge, Jose Veras, Ben Revere, Nick Markakis, Adam Dunn, Mark Burley were selected. And then in round 19, Yasiel Puig, I've never heard of him before, Alfonso Soriano, Wade Miley, Andy Pettit, Alejandro De Aza, Mark Reynolds, Michael Kadire, Brett Gardner, and Kyuji Fujikawa were all selected. I've got one pick coming up before I'm selecting here, and Michael Morse was that pick. I'm looking at Ryan Madsen again here, Emilio Bonifacio, Corey Hart, and some starters. Iwakuma, Mike Fears, Clay Buckhold, Stan Straley, AJ Griffin, Shelby Miller, Julio Teheran. Between all the starters, I don't need to take one here. I'd be happy having any of those guys as one of the ones in my lineup. I am interested in adding Madsen here to fill that, to consolidate myself as the guy with the Angels closer. With that said, I also kind of want to draft Corey Hart, and taking 2 guys who are likely going to start the year on the DL is kind of rough, but I think I can handle it with 5 bench spots. I should be able to kind of finagle enough moves and position flexibility to make that work for me. So I'm going to take Madsen here, and then Hart with my next pick, I think. I'm not sure if he or Bonifacio is ranked higher. Bonifacio is barely ranked higher, so kind of just got to take the one you want. And I think Hart is that guy. Bonifacio is, well, maybe not. We'll see. We'll take Madsen first, and we'll see what our wheel opponent does here. He took Cameron Maben with one of his picks, and who knows what he'll do next. I don't really mind trying to wait on Bonifacio because I feel like there are enough other players who will steal bases that are also available. Guys like Cameron Maben. I'm pretty sure Juan Pierre is still available. Ryan Cook was just selected. Rajay Davis is down here. Guys who have speed. I mean, they don't have the same like level of speed as Bonifacio, as far as like how many bases he steals like per at bat or per time he's on base, I guess. But I think I'm pretty well set up in steals overall that I can wait on that, take Corey Hart here, and still get a steals guy with one of my next picks. The argument against that is take Bonifacio now because we know he's going to start the year healthy, whereas we don't know that that's going to happen with Corey Hart. Either way, I think I'd rather bank on being able to pick up steals later as opposed to like the potential for a 30 home run player, albeit for only part of a season, but one that I can stash on my DL is probably more worth it to me now. This is a tough pick. I'm not totally convinced, but I'm going to take Corey Hart. My next pick, I'll look for Bonifacio, and then I want to get at least one more starter, possibly 2. And we'll be back for those later picks in just a moment. After I picked Corey Hart, the next picks were Adam Eaton, Trevor Cahill, Jason Worth, Matt Joyce, Tommy Hansen, Kendrys Morales, Alex Avila, Clay Buchholz, Carlos Ruiz, and Jurickson Profar. After that, we're Travis d'Arnaud, Shelby Miller, Lance Berkman, Ryan Domit, Jason Kubel, Starling Marte, JP Arancibia, Jonathan Lucroy, and Mark Teixeira. Of those picks, I really like the Shelby Miller pick. That seems like a pretty good upside play. In these later rounds, that's really what you're playing for more than anything else, is just the chance for someone to break out. With that said, I'm going to take Julio Teheran here and hope that Bonifacio slips to this second pick I've got coming up. This will likely be the last starting pitcher I select in the draft. I want to take a batter, Bonifacio, with my next pick, and that very final pick of the draft for me, I want to spend on another closer if there's one available, and I'm looking at Mitchell Boggs and Al Albuquerque. Albuquerque is kind of a speculative pickup, if only because I don't think Bruce Rondon has been good enough to land that closing job in Detroit, whereas Albuquerque is a very good pitcher, and I don't know. If it doesn't work out, drop him before the season starts, pick up somebody else, and so there's very little risk in it. But with that said, Bonifacio is on my radar right now. Chris Johnson of Atlanta was just selected by the guy at the turn here. He's got one more pick, and hopefully it's not Mr. Boneface. So he just took Rajay Davis, and I'm going to jump on Bonifacio here, another Blue Jays stolen base machine. Yeah, that looks pretty good. This team came together pretty well. I wish I had jumped on a starting pitcher maybe one round earlier, like that time when I could have taken Matt Latos. I probably should have taken him. My starting pitching definitely feels like the weak point of this team. Although I like the guys I got. I got Gallardo, Josh Johnson, Marco Estrada, Anibal Sanchez, Matt Harvey, and Teheran. Those guys all have a lot of upside, and I do plan to stream a little bit, as I do in most leagues, especially once I can get Hart onto the DL. I was looking at kind of the guys I have in my offense earlier, and almost all of them is a threat to steal at least 10 bases, which is really nice. Like between Belt, Hosmer, Desmond Jennings, Adam Jones, Jason Hayward, Tulowitzki, Laurie, and Aaron Hill. Like, none of those guys is a slouch when it comes to speed and running around the base paths. Prince Fielder and Jesus Montero are both pretty slow. They're not going to steal me any bases, but the fact that all the other guys on my roster will, in addition to Emilio Bonifacio coming off the bench as a steals-only type of player, I feel pretty good about that. I want one more closer here because with 2 relief pitcher spots and 4 pitcher spots, I want to dedicate at least 4 or 5 of those to closers every day in a daily league if I can. And so far, I can do that with Axford, Perkins, Ernesto Frary / Ryan Madsen, and then this 4th person I'm going to take, which will either be Mitchell Boggs or Al Albuquerque. I'll probably take Albuquerque, speculating that he'll win the job. Boggs is probably the safer pick because we know he's going to open the year as the closer in St. Louis. But with that said, I would rather luck into a guy who's going to be the closer all year with Albuquerque. If it doesn't work out, he'll still provide good peripheral numbers other than saves if I want him to, or I can drop him for another starter or some help on offense. Yeah, so 1 pick left. I will pause until then and rejoin you at the end of the draft. All right, we're back here for the final round of the picks since I took Bonifacio. I'm not going to read them all. The ones I liked were Machado at 255 overall. Let's see, who else? I don't mind Michael Young at 261. Like, there's a chance he could bounce back a little this year. I like Sean Markham. I like Wandy Rodriguez, just his last round kind of value plays. Ricky Nolasco is a guy that I've liked a lot in the past, but he's burned me so many times. I don't think I could ever get excited about owning him again. Sergio Santos was taking 2 picks before me here, and so is Zach Cozart. I like both of those picks. Santos is a speculation on saves, and Cozart is just a speculation on upside at a thin position. So yeah, it's back to me here. Last pick of the draft. I'm going to take Al Albuquerque, and that rounds out what I think is a pretty good team here. I'm excited to be able to get Hart or Madsen onto the DL pretty much immediately and replace them with some other option. And there are plenty of good ones in the player pool here. Lots of good starting pitchers available, and that's probably what I'll pick up. Someone like Iwakuma or Mike Fears or Dan Straley or AJ Griffin. Even James McDonald maybe on the Pirates. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody, and hopefully I'll have time to do one more of these before the final weekend of kind of spring training fantasy baseball draft season. So stay tuned for that. I'll also have a rankings update coming very soon with an article to go along with it. Take care, everybody. We'll catch you next time.